We've got a few people on with us now and several people who have indicated that they'll be watching the recording later. So thank you. This is going to be pretty informal, but it's an opportunity first and foremost for our applicants to ask questions of our current and former interns. So why don't we do it this way? If you have a question or have a comment, why don't you either raise your hand in the chat feature or I'm sorry, raise your hand in the reaction feature or type your question into the chat. And if there aren't specific questions, I have a few questions that I think might be helpful for those of us here and or watching the recording. I guess maybe why don't we start with having our either current MSDI students, interns, or former interns introduce themselves. If you don't mind, let's start with Grace. Would you mind introducing yourself, where you are in the program, and just a little bit about your process of becoming a dietitian?
Yeah, so my name's Grace. I am in the standalone DI program with UNC, and I just started this summer. I am getting to complete it the part-time route, so that was really nice for me because I'm also completing my master's degree at another university. So it was really nice that they allow me to work part-time, and then I'll get to complete my program next summer. They're really nice, and yeah, I've been really blessed with this group.
And we're blessed to have you, Grace. Thank you for being here tonight as well. And Zoe, it's so great to see you. Can you introduce yourself for us?
All right. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. Hi, I'm Zoe. I was a former MSDI. So I did the joint program for the Master's in Dietetic internship. I graduated this past May. I got my RD license in June, and I have been working since. So, a little bit, I guess, about the MSDI program for me was I did it full time. I had a baby when I started. I had a 1-month-old baby. And so I was able to do the program with a baby without childcare. And I also was able to do the program working at one point full time. And I also was able to do the program with my husband deployed because we are military. So lots of different scenarios there of the program being very doable.
Yes. And Zoe was located in Alaska. Are you still in Alaska?
I am for just a few more months.
Okay. Wow. Well, congrats on becoming an RDN, and it's so great to see you out on the other side, Zoe.
Yay.
Sav, are you able to introduce yourself?
Hey there, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Alrighty. So I'm Sav. I'm currently in the MSDI program. I start my internship summer of 2025. Again, I agree with Zoe and Grace that this program is very doable if you choose to go the standalone DI route or the MSDI route. I also do graduate assistantship work for the school, and prior to me moving to Oregon a few months back, I was also holding another job where I was a kitchen manager at an eating disorders treatment facility. And so I found that it was really nice to be able to juggle all the things of master's degree, graduate assistantship work, and my other job, while also trying to secure preceptors and getting ready for the internship.
Thank you so much, Sav. So we're so grateful to have a variety of people here today who have all had different experiences, be it completing the internship while working, moving, completing a graduate degree, caring for a family. So we're grateful to have you. I have a few questions to ask, but before I ask those, has anyone thought of questions that are specific to them that they feel they'd like answered? Okay. Well, one of my questions is for you three, for students or interns who must remain employed, how do you explain this to potential preceptors? So when you're reaching out to them, Is this something you tell them right off the bat? Do you find it's better to wait? How do you navigate discussing this with preceptors?
I could jump in here. I during the internship, I also worked and I had family. And so when I was looking for preceptors, first I like was asking if they were open to being a preceptor. And then we'd have that kind of conversation. And then once we started to talk more about like times or what the process of precepting would look like, that's when I would kind of share my side of things. Or I'd be like, okay, but also, are you available during like, are you available for me? For example, my clinical rotation, I had to leave it at 2 p.m. Like I had to. Even though they'd prefer you to leave around 3 or 4 p.m. But because my husband would work during the morning, or he would work in the evenings because I worked in the mornings, and then we didn't have childcare available, so we would switch off during that time. And they were really flexible with me. Most preceptors are super flexible at like, this is like, are you able to let me maybe like precept a week longer to make up for the fact that I can't precept until 4 p.m. every day? And they were super flexible with that. Other preceptors were really great, where like maybe they're only available Monday, Wednesday, Friday for you to precept, and then you have limited hours on top of it. There's different ways to keep like rotations really flexible. And so I would say like leave hours open wherever you can. Because if you're doing like Monday, Wednesday, Friday at one place, but then maybe it's possible for you to do Tuesday, Thursday with somebody else part-time and get more experience that way. The internship's really flexible in that sense, and most preceptors are really understanding of like time commitments and family commitments and work commitments. And just having a strong, open communication about that earlier on is important, so you guys can set up a plan for success.
Thank you for sharing your experience, Zoe. That's great. I'm so glad to hear that they were so flexible and you were able to complete it in the way that worked for you. Okay, another question that I have, this I guess will be more for Grace. So for someone completing a graduate degree outside of UNC while doing the internship, what suggestions do you have for managing your workload and your schedule?
Yeah, that's a great question. Definitely just a good calendar and keeping track of your day to day of just the tasks you have to complete weekly. I kind of take it week by week, and then working really closely with your advisor at your other graduate program helps a lot, and having them support you. And then the UNC department is also really out there to help you, and communication with your preceptors, like Zoe mentioned. Yeah, just really working on your time management helps, and organization in that way.
And also being able to do it part-time if you need to. Um, Great. And the other thing about doing part-time, like I mentioned during the DI open house, just because you can be designated as a full-time or a part-time intern, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your hours have to reflect full-time or part-time every week of the entire internship. So there will be time, I mean, we encourage you to take a week or so in between rotations to reset, prepare for your next rotation, and also to leave some wiggle room, because as everyone here has learned or will learn, things don't always go exactly according to plan, whether that be because the affiliation agreement or the onboarding process was more lengthy than we had realized, or we weren't given the correct information, or there was a natural disaster. And like, we have interns right now in Florida who have been delayed in their rotations because of the storms. And so giving yourself wiggle room in between rotations is great so that you're not pushing all your other rotations or having to return back to complete your hours. But with that said, if you're in a graduate program and you know that finals week or midterms week or when your thesis is about to be due, you'll be particularly busy, you may discuss that with your preceptors and say, like, for these 2 weeks in December during finals week, it would be great to cut down to part-time hours or to take a break and then come back. Just communicating that with them and with us is the best way to do it rather than getting there and being totally overwhelmed. There was a question typed into the chat. Do any of you have an MS in a field other than nutrition and dietetics, and wondering how difficult it might be to pass the exam with an MS in another field? I don't think that's the case, right? Okay.
Not me, but I know like a couple people in our cohort had an MS in another field, and they're RDs today, so they passed. And usually I think I'm not sure if the same resources, maybe Brianna knows what is her name who does the tutoring through UNC.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Michelle.
I was going to say the same thing is during the internship, there are specified hours set aside for the group to get together and discuss and have discuss the RT exam, questions on the RD exam, and help prep for the RD exam during the internship. So you're not totally alone on trying to study for that on your own.
And the other, the question in the chat asked about additional courses. So for the NEDI standalone, you'll be taking 2 review courses before you even set foot in a rotation. And those are crash courses on MNT and food service, which are huge portions of the RDN exam. So the preparation begins before you even begin day 1 of rotations and then continues till the very end.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much. That was me that asked the question. My master's degree is from over 30 years ago, and I was just really worried I wouldn't pass, I'd have trouble with the exam.
Thank you for bringing that up, Tammy. And I also want to say that until 1 year ago, nobody needed to have a master's in anything. So
Okay.
this is designed to build dietitians, and we haven't really changed much of what we do. We still offer the same support and resources. Having a master's in dietetics is fabulous, and we've been doing this for 30 years without having masters being a requirement.
Okay,
What recent was your undergraduate nutrition courses for your DPT verification statement?
Oh, so I'm at MSU Denver right now, and I will finish my coursework about
You'll
a
be
year
fine.
from now. December 2025, I'll finish my coursework.
You'll be fine.
Okay.
I can confidently tell you
Okay.
with undergraduate work, just completing your DPD required courses, you'll be prepared to start.
Okay, I thought possibly once the master's requirement was put in place, I thought maybe the exam changed at the same time and got, a little harder. It's the same exam.
The exam changes constantly. I don't believe that they've necessarily made it harder. They're constantly reevaluating it based on updated data and scientific research. But from what I understand, it's not necessarily harder. But that's a good point. Thanks for bringing that up, Tammy.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Another question that I had for our interns who were or are caregivers to family members, and I think Zoe, you kind of addressed this as telling your preceptors you would have to leave at certain times, but do you have any other suggestions for future interns who are caring for young children or caring for elderly parents or have children at home and they need to make adjustments to their schedule and their whatever?
This so variable depending on the age and like what support structure you have. Like with us being military, we're far from family. And if anybody does or doesn't have kids, they might know that like finding childcare is like prolifically difficult. So because everywhere is usually full, there's usually wait lists, things of that sort. So if you are looking for childcare, get on a wait list now. That's if you have family support, always have a backup plan. Like if your kids or if your family member's sick, like create a support structure where you have like plan A, plan B, plan C. So I knew that I had my husband that we were leaning on, but then if he was deployed, I would have neighbors. I would try to like make sure that I was in good communication with preceptors. As for like if you're part of the MSDI program and you're doing the first like 2 years, it's really manageable to because you need to schedule your own like times to do coursework and stuff. And so being on time management with that is going to be really key. Something that helped me the most was telling myself like that due dates were several days prior to what they actually were. So if my little one got sick, or if something happened, or if there was just not enough in place, I still had leeway, but I really set it up to where like I wanted stuff submitted days before that
Mm.
was needed. And I had great communication with my professors, because they were super open and helpful. And their understanding of like that things happen, like the program's very flexible, when you're putting in the effort and communicating and keeping up on time management. But at the same time, like life happens too. And I think everybody gets that life happens at times.
Absolutely, Zoe. And thank you for mentioning that too, because we can have the best laid out schedule and have exactly the number of hours we need. And then, a hurricane comes through, or your kid gets sick, or you get sick, or your preceptor gets sick. You
Yeah,
know,
I had the like an instance at the during the middle of my or near the end of my internship where in Alaska we have a ton of moose and the roads are icy and the weather conditions are awful, and we hit a moose and we lost our car. We like weren't great. It was a really big, and I just started a new rotation, and that was like life happened, but and we had to like share a car and figure it all out, and everybody was like great at communicating, really understanding. Like you just got to make sure you got your email on, texting, calls, whatever you got to do to just let people know what's up, and they get it.
absolutely. Yeah. There was a question in the chat asking if the exam is timed. The RDN exam is, yes, it's timed. I think it's about 3 hours. But that part of the program is educating you on the RDN exam, everything that will be on it, how to prepare, and everything about it. But yes, it definitely is timed. Are there any other questions, or do our interns and students who are here have anything additional that they thought of that might be helpful in terms of applying or executing the internship or the MSDI?
Has anybody worked full-time, like a full-time job while doing their internship and taking care of children?
I worked a remote full-time position, that was half remote, half in person. So that kind of like depends on where you'll take that. I would recommend leaning more towards part-time. Your internship, the best advice I got prior to this is that your internship is going to be such an immersive experience that you want to really enjoy that to the best of your ability. And if you're spreading yourself so thin, and like if you think about how many hours you have in a week and a day, and if you're trying to intern for 4 to 8 hours a day plus work on top of that, there's ways to like manage it, but also like quality of life might also be challenging there. And so you want to like you worked so hard to get to this point, and you put in so much effort, and there's so much to absorb during the internship that like if you're able to do like something part-time, or if you're able to take this time just to really like absorb the experience, I would highly recommend it, because um it's really like it's challenging but enjoyable. And it's like really the first time you get to really dip your toes in the water. So
Thank
yeah.
you.
For that, Zoe.
Could someone maybe describe to the different types of rotations regarding the amount of time to do your regular job or the job that you're working? Because when you think of foods, when I think of food service, and you guys can either confirm or say something else, but some community rotations, they're doing events on weekends or health fairs, or they're open on Saturdays, and a lot of food service departments are open 7 days a week. That gives you a couple more days to work. With your internship hours, where clinical may not be that flexible in regards to being able to have a full-time job or even a part-time job getting through those clinical hours. Maybe you guys could speak to the different types of rotations and their flexibility.
I can kind of mention that. So when I was building my rotation schedule, I went into it planning to do part-time, like anywhere between 25 to 32 hours a week, so that I could dedicate a couple days of the week to my graduate requirements alone. But then it got down to that clinical one. So all of my other ones were willing to work with me on that. They're happy to um, do those hours that I asked for. And then my clinical one, they do require or recommend that they go full time. So I was able to set that one up late enough in the following year that I'm done with my master's thesis and I can dedicate those full time hours. So it's kind of, you just pick the time of the year that you are able to make it work. Honestly, that's kind of how I was able to organize it. And that is going to be my last rotation, is 8 weeks of full time.
That was my next question, to see how long the span is. I do have clinical experience. I'm a registered dental hygienist, so I'm hoping that I can get some of those hours. But I know that we have to have so many clinical hours too. So, but that does help me. Thank you so much for your input, for both of you guys. Thank you.
And just to clarify, for if you're referring to APL, then you can put you can apply for APL for community or food service, but not for clinical. So depending on if you're what you're doing as a dental hygienist, if you notice that you're able to fulfill some of the competencies on that APL list, then we'd probably put them toward community if we felt like that was appropriate. But we will not be reducing your clinical hours for any intern.
Understand. I also have like a CNA. I have food service experience. I have a couple of
Okay.
things in it. So hopefully something qualifies.
I'm sure it will then.
Actually, I do have a question about that, since we're talking about it. With the APL, do you mind, because I wasn't able to make it into the other meeting, do you mind kind of explaining that for community hours? Because I happen to be working in an extension office in community health and community nutrition. So what would be the maximum amount of hours that could be accepted for that?
You can put up to 220 hours, and we did record the session. We also have videos on our website for you to review, so that you have all of the information rather than just a brief explanation. So I'd encourage you to do that. And if you would like the recording from the DI open house, please email me and I'll send that to you, because that way you can visualize it. The PowerPoint's up, all the information is up for you.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. Is there anything else we'd like to share before we conclude our evening?
Actually, I just have one more question, if that's okay.
Please.
I'm curious if anyone is able or willing to share, maybe not necessarily regrets, but maybe something, if they could pick one thing that they kind of wish that they had done differently, either a different type of rotation or experience you wish you had gotten. Anything that anybody's willing to share, I would appreciate that.
I feel like during the internship, there's a lot of like animosity built up and anxiety built up prior to starting because you're like, what am I gonna get into? It's the internship, dun dun dun. And and so I think that if you give yourself more kindness before starting, um, that like the preceptor will knows that you're an intern and is there to teach you and is there to kind of help you get your feet in the water. And like as long as you are putting forth effort, showing up every day, studying, applying what you know, applying what you've been learning, like I think that you'll do well. And so I know for myself personally, like I think especially with clinical, you hear like, oh, clinical rotations, like what are they gonna expect of me? And I feel like after coming out the back end of that, like if you just try to take it one day at a time, focus on the day that you're in and focus on like positive self-talk and not letting that anxiety get to you, and enjoying the experience, that's kind of the main thing. So I wouldn't say regret, but more so just like keep telling yourself like I'm learning, I'm going through this is the first time I'm doing it. And at the end of the day, like you're just there to really like absorb and apply and kind of see and experience and all of that, you know. At least that's from my experience.
Yeah, and I'd also like to comment on that, not like regret wise, but if it's like regret in the sense of like, oh, I wish I could have gotten this experience. My experience so far with securing preceptors and meeting with them is that they're also open to hearing about your interests and what you want to learn from their facility. So, for example, I had a meet and greet with Southern Oregon Head Start last week to start my internship next year, and they're kind of like, "What is like your main goal from this? Like, what are you most interested in your career field, your degree path?" And I really love research, community needs assessment, and like addressing food insecurity issues in my community. And so I expressed that to them, and they like were like, "Oh yeah, let's do this. Like we can get you involved in like all these like ideas and programs we have." They were super receptive of it. So also just being open in communication with your preceptor of what you're interested in. Do you really want to focus like clinical wise, like on renal care and stuff? Like what do you want to see most of? Might help too.
That was a great question and some great replies. Grace, did you have something to share?
No, I was just gonna say you guys covered it. I think that the only thing I could think of was when I was creating my preceptor form, I went very much off of the master list that UNC provides, which is very, very helpful. I don't think I would have gotten my application in or the confidence I had without the preceptor list that they provide. But I did a food service rotation and now I'm doing my concentration, which is also in food service. So part of me kind of wishes I would have taken a little bit more time to find different preceptors within those concentration ones that they offer to kind of give myself another point of view. So like I'm kind of missing the ICU or another nutrition education one. Not that I regret it. I love the concentration I'm in right now and it's still very beneficial and I'm learning a lot, but just giving yourself a little bit more time to find additional people that might not be on that list and like the most convenient.
I'm glad the preceptor list was helpful for you, Grace. It is interesting you're starting with food service and then doing your management concentration with a food service company. But I think that'll just make you that much more excited to move into community, which I think is next for you. Cool.
Something that's really helpful to do through your internship that was really helpful for me at least, is asking your preceptors because you're most likely going to be around multiple dietitians, of varying expertise. Like you're not just going to be with your like one preceptor, but it helped me because asking everyone like what ways they found helpful to be studying for the RD exam. Because then especially during my clinical rotation, like when I asked that, I got a lot of really helpful resources. Somebody even gave me their Gene Inman's book, which was like, oh my gosh, super exciting. And so like if you ask around, usually they'll give you a lot of really, really good resources that are super helpful for the exam as well. But also just want to say that UNC does like an excellent job at like preparing you for the exam. So I know there's a lot of anxiety behind that also, but I wouldn't try to not stress the exam through your internship. Enjoy it, like do all the parts you're going to do, because then once you start like going through the exam material, the more you apply the internship, the easier it should be to study for the exam. And then UNC has like their program of like helping you study and tutor for it was so helpful for me, and they give you a lot of great resources. So all around you're getting set up for success like everywhere that you are. And that's it. That's all my advice, I believe.
Love hearing that, Zoe. Thank you for sharing. We do our best, and it's so great to see the success of our former interns and students. All right. Well, I just want to again say thank you to our panel here. I always love learning from our interns, and just the reminder of how diverse our backgrounds are and what we're doing outside of these meetings, right? It's pretty incredible, and you should all be proud of yourself for getting this far. And for all of our applicants, you too should be proud of yourself for getting this far and even considering this career. We're so grateful to have you. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions or if you would like this recording. And if not, we look forward to reading your application in a little while here. Thank you so much. Have a great night, everybody.
Thanks, Brianna.
Bye.